Hello, I am Brian Johnson, founder and CEO of Kernel, and welcome to our first live broadcast. Today we are introducing Kernel Flow. Kernel Flow is the world's first non-invasive brain interface that one can dare imagine being in every home by 2033. The technology powering Kernel Flow has been proven safe for decades. Anyone can use it. It is even used with babies. Starting in January, we will have 50 full head coverage systems available for select partners. Today's objective is to educate about what we've built, how you might use it, and to demonstrate its capabilities for the most scientific, for the best scientific and market potential. You can have this. To help paint the picture of how these first 50 devices in January could lead to them being in every home by 2033, today you will learn the technology basics, hear from outside experts, and see a system teardown. You will learn that Kernel Flow, which uses light to detect brain activity, is safer than going outside on a sunny day. You will also learn that Kernel Flow captures 1,000 times more information than comparable systems on the market today. However, this dramatic performance improvement is just one variable underlying why flow represents a step function change. It's also about closing the effort and time gap. For example, if you want knowledge about what you're eating, nutritional labels are accessible within a glance. If you want to know your temperature, thermometers enable immediate knowledge. If you want a precise heart rate measurement, just look at your wrist. But what if you want high-quality information about your brain? Say you have a question about your brain's health or cognitive wellness, or you want to improve something about yourself. Outside of a visit to the emergency room, it will take you literally weeks. Our goal is to make it so that you have immediate access to your own brain so that anyone, anywhere, can glean valuable insights about the inner workings of the thing that makes you, you. In time, individuals and organizations of all types will begin building applications for our brain and mind using Kernel Flow. We can likely imagine several examples, including education, gaming, entertainment, and performance. Other applications will surely surprise us. Combining immediate access to our minds with a robust ecosystem will introduce a new era, one based upon neural quantification, where we build a world where this data reshapes health and wellness, relationships and learning, and performance. Having near immediate access to our brain and minds will represent one of the most significant revolutions in all of history. With that, the agenda for today is as follows. First, a 2-minute video that imagines what a brain interface in our daily life may look like. Then kernel scientists will present the underlying technology. You will hear from experts who have been working with this technology for decades. We will then show an abbreviated version of the Kernel Flow teardown. The full teardown will, the full-length version will play at the end of the event. We will then walk you through a partner program, including what we are offering and how you can apply. We will wrap this with a live Q&A session, during which we will be answering a few questions that we submitted ahead of the event, one of which was a question regarding if we have recorded brain activity with our hardware, and if so, if we can share some results. Stay tuned for that. The visuals are pretty cool. For those of you on the live stream now, please submit your questions via the link listed in the box. All right, with that, let's get started. Next, we're going to hear from Catherine, a biomedical engineer and neuroscientist who, before joining Kernel, worked at Boston Children's Hospital using this technology to study brain development in babies.
We will introduce our Kernel Flow device, a time-domain, functional, near-infrared spectroscopy system for imaging the brain in action. The name is a bit of a mouthful, so we abbreviate it to td-fNIRS. What's the best way to measure brain activity from outside the skull? No surgery required. You could measure the activity of the neurons themselves, but it's hard to get just the ones we're interested in. Instead, we can take advantage of the fact that the brain has many blood vessels that supply oxygen to the neurons, and then when neurons use oxygen, the color of the blood shifts away from reddish and toward blue. Kernel Flow shines light at the blood in the brain. The light bounces around in all directions, and by chance, some light will bounce back through the skull, skin, and back out of the head. We then use the amount of light we can detect and how it changes over time to calculate how active a nearby brain region is. Using color to tell something about the content of what you're measuring is called spectroscopy. How do we know which scattered light waves originated from which part of the brain? Kernel Flow is a time domain, or TD system. TD systems use very short pulses of light with precise timing in order to measure and compare the time each photon takes to arrive at a detector placed across the head. We then use Monte Carlo models, the kind that power particle simulators in the best modern AIs, to analyze the shape and spread of the arrival times at the detectors, all of which gives us clues to the path the light has taken. Here we show the path of the photons in black as they travel from the red source location to the blue detector. As time goes on, the photons travel deeper into the head. The increased timing information we get from Kernel Flow relative to other optical systems allows us to better isolate the signal coming from the brain as compared to the signal from the scalp and the skull.
For example, here we are showing where brain activity for a motor task is reconstructed using traditional td-fNIRS methods. If we compare this to the activation pattern when we use td-fNIRS information, we see more localized motor activity, as we expect from this task.
By measuring from detectors placed around the head, we can make a dynamic map of brain activity over parts of the brain closest to the skull, which is where much of language, vision, movement, and higher order cognition is processed or planned. Combined with mathematical models of anatomy and how light propagates, we can reconstruct where in the brain changes in blood oxygenation and related brain activity are coming from. And in part because photons, on average, travel through the skull and back out in an arc or banana path, the more detectors we have, the better the spatial resolution and the better the map.
Here we are showing some simulated brain activity in green. As we add more detectors, we can see that our estimation of where the brain activity is coming from gets closer to the correct location.
These advancements allow for precise localization of brain activity. Kernel Flow is the beginning of a new era of neuroscience, providing scalable, low-cost cortical activity maps.
Thank you, Catherine. Next, mainframes became PCs and then smartphones. The $1 billion genome is now a few $100s. Kernel Flow is on a similar, rapidly lowering cost curve. Let's hear from outside experts about the possibilities.
All right, both of those technological advances, time domain and full head coverage, are essential. They're essential because the brain doesn't work in isolated units. It works as an integrated whole. If you want to image the brain, you have to image the whole brain. End of issue. Now, time domain. The time domain gives us an advantage on the whole head that we don't have with conventional NIRS now. And what it does is allow us with better resolution and deeper into the cortical surface. So it gives us more information, whole brain.
And that's the uniqueness of the time domain system. It can give us that information, that extra information of, the path length, what we call the depth of the light into the tissue. And what is interesting is that, our brain is inside the skull and surrounded by our scalp, our skin, and our hair. So the good thing about the time domain systems is that by controlling the depth, you can be sure that your measurement is coming from the brain cortex.
And when you send a pulse of light, you send the pulse of light and you wait and you see, you detect the light that is coming out of the tissue, like in this case, out of the brain. It's like knocking. You knock and you listen. The longer you wait, so the sounds that you're going to be hearing later is a sound that has traveled deeper inside the material you knock too. And in time resolve NIRS, the same. You send a pulse of light and you wait, because there is an equivalent between time and distance. So these photons that arrive later will be probing the tissue deeper. Time domain is important because current NIRS devices, if they are time domain, they are not full head coverage. So you don't have both. This will enable many possibilities. So Kernel Flow has an unprecedented speed. So it's at least 10 times faster than the device we have right now. If you look at just a single channel. And on top of that, it allows to have a full head coverage. So this will be definitely a groundbreaking technology.
If what we understand and from the specs that what we understand is true, then I feel like it is moving from DOS to Windows. Kind of a big change, a richer, more kind of diverse information that will come from the brain that we can take advantage of in many different application areas. I think that's the richness of this information, I think will enable a lot of inventors, tinkerers to come up with unique applications. And that's the exciting point, because now we have this new opportunity.
For years, the neuroscientists and the psychologists were coming to us and giving us challenges. And they were saying that it would be great if we could monitor the brain when you're walking. It would be great if I can monitor your brain in a car. It would be great if I could actually monitor, the brain of a very frail person or somebody that had a stroke. So they were giving us all these challenges. 20 years after, we now have, I think, completed scientists. And now we challenge them and say, this is the instruments that you asked us for. Go and tell us how you're going to be using them.
Magnetic resonance imaging systems, like it's traditional neuroimaging, it imposes a lot of restrictions during the measurement. It requires people to lay down in this small tube. It's highly restrictive. The things that we do are very different than our everyday conditions. As we see more practical and accessible neuroimaging systems, we can actually use these to improve our everyday function and how we communicate with each other and how we do our work, how we play, and overall improve our everyday life.
Think of it as crowd imaging, so that you have, these things on a large number of people. It needs to be supplemented with seeing images of what's actually going on and what's actually being recorded. So that I think that what's missing, why this hasn't happened, is just imagination. People haven't thought of it, or they think of it and it's just too hard to do, so they say not in my lifetime. But it's totally doable. Just it has to be done on a very big scale.
Vast majority of the processing is coming from the cortex near the skull.
This is higher level of functions like executive functions, decision-making, working memory, attention. And we are seeing a lot of activity are actually in these outer cortex areas. And this is the neocortex. This is the most developed area, is the prefrontal area especially. And monitoring this area gives us rich information, and depending on what we actually want to accomplish, like it's a brain-computer interface or a clinical application, comparison between healthy and control. So again, we can get good enough information specific to our application or the scientific problem at hand.
But what we can see is all of the related activity that's associated with that core brain. And many of the cognitive processes in frontal lobe are available on the cortical surface. The sensory motor strip is available. The language areas are available. The whole occipital lobe, the visual areas are available. And so this whole social system is available, the temporal parietal junction. So there is so much that is active during interpersonal interactions and live natural behaviors, that it's a treasure trove. It's like a gold mine. It's not the whole brain, but it's a huge part of it, and it's a huge part of it that we need to understand.
I think these brain data are just going to give us more metrics about who we are, and so and how we operated throughout the day, and a lot of people use those metrics now to kind of guide the way they function throughout the day, and they feel that it gives them goals to try to obtain, and so it would be fantastic to go beyond calorie counting and step counting and hours that you sleep, and take it to just your attentional state or your brain states, and being able to modulate those brain states during the day, and figuring out what gives you an off day and what gives you an on day. I think that's going to be a big first hit as these become ubiquitous.
I put it in the same category as the fitness bands that you wear. I think that There's a lot of startup companies now that are interested in all types of biomarkers that you wear and information is transmitted. Why not the brain? I mean, it's silly that we don't think about the brain. It's only because we just haven't figured out how to do it or what we need to know. But you think of it as the Fitbit on your all types of.
Next, Ryan Field, who leads the Kernel Flow development, is going to walk us through the past 3 years of how we've achieved dramatic cost reductions, miniaturization, and manufacturing readiness so that everyone can anticipate having this device in your home.
A system that is able to non-invasively and precisely image brain activity was not easy. We started on this journey almost 3 years ago and have iterated through a number of designs along the way. Today, we have developed our first production prototypes, and our product development team has grown to nearly 40 people. Now, I will walk you through the developments we've made in both laser and detector integration that enable our Flow device. The first detection system that we experimented with was commercially available and provided 4 channels of fiber-coupled time domain measurements. We were able to demonstrate the power of time domain system using the benchtop devices that you see here. This prototype system seeded our development efforts, and we set off on a path to build our own td-fNIRS system that could eventually be integrated into a wearable product. Our second system, which we call Alpha, is shown here and is the first fully designed by Kernel with custom electronics and detectors. This replaces the 4 commercial detection channels that you just saw. With our successful demonstration of Alpha, we set out to further integrate components of the system to continue our drive toward a wearable td-fNIRS device. This leads us to our third system, which we call Beta. This system was designed to combine all of the necessary detection electronics onto a single chip. This chip has everything needed to support 4 detection channels, just like the previous 2 systems, but is only 11 millimeters by 7 millimeters. Each of these devices represents a stage in our development process towards a fully integrated hardware system. In order to make our system wearable, though, we needed to take things even further. We needed to make the device smaller and lower power. This led us to our final prototype chip, Gamma. Here we pack a single td-fNIRS channel into an area smaller than 2.5 millimeters by 3 millimeters. The other key component to building a td-fNIRS system is a pulse laser. These pulse lasers are commonly used in applications like LiDAR. However, for td-fNIRS, we need pulses of light that are extremely fast. The first device we purchased that is capable of this is shown here. Kernel Flow has over 50 lasers in it though, so we needed a much more compact and efficient design so someone could actually wear it on their head. Much like our detector development, we iterated through a number of designs to reach our target form factor. Here we have 3 different iterations of our laser development that show the significant reduction in size we have achieved with our engineering efforts. Soon, we will show you how we use our custom lasers and detector chips to build a modular td-fNIRS system that can cover the entire head.
Thank you, Ryan. Impressive. So Ryan is backstage doing a costume change and will be up in a few minutes to do a teardown with Professor David Boas.
I'm Ryan Field, the product lead for the Kernel Flow device, and I'm here with Dr. David Boas, a professor at Boston University who has spent decades developing and working with fNIRS systems. Together, we are going to tear down the Kernel Flow device and point out some of the interesting features that enable our system. As we go through, Professor Boas will be able to ask questions as we dig deeper into the design. He has not previously seen any of the details of this device. So let's get started. David, thank you for joining us today to go through this teardown of our system and see what's inside of the Kernel Flow device. So I'm going to take you on a guided tour of the technology we've built to kind of show you piece by piece what we put together. And I want you to ask as many questions as you want, kind of poke around, and as I do this, we can just have a back and forth exchange about the things that interest you. So I'll start off by showing you our full Kernel Flow device. So I have it upside down so you can kind of get a feel for all the modules and channels that come together to build this. So there are 52 individual modules here. Each module has a single laser in the center and 6 detectors around the outside. So what that means is on a full head, we have 52 lasers and 312 detectors. And as you can see, we kind of have the modules snap in to the helmet very nicely. The other thing about the device, again, is we've kind of structured it so that there are groups of modules. So you can kind of see from the side here that we have a cluster of 7 that would cover part of the auditory cortex where your brain processes sounds. And then we have some grouped together in the front here for the prefrontal cortex. And then we have motor and the visual cortex in the back. So we kind of tried to design the headgear both in a way that sort of covers all the key areas and is flexible enough so that people with different size heads could still use the same device. We don't need to custom build the headgear for each person. And so that's the idea behind putting them on these plates.
Is each module like a self-contained, or do they communicate between modules?
So each module is self-contained, and we have a couple of microcontrollers that are on the helmet to gather the data and then ship it off through a single USB cable. And actually, in just a minute, I'll show you a demonstration of a self-contained module plugged into one of the microcontrollers and a single USB cable hooked up to the computer with live data coming off.
Yeah. Great. I look forward to seeing that.
Any questions about the full helmet, or should we move on to that exciting part of the demo?
Well, so we're using this to measure hemoglobin concentrations. Typical fNIRS systems will have 2 wavelengths. How about this system?
Yes, that's a great question. We do have 2 wavelengths. So that center source light pipe I showed you actually has both 690 wavelength and an 850 wavelength that come out of it, out of the same source.
Okay, great.
And I'll show you how we do that inside the module when we take it all apart.
All right. And this distance between the emitter and the receiver?
Yeah, so on this, within the module, it's a 10 millimeter source detector spacing. So that's the separation there. And then between modules, we can also measure the light that propagates between one module to the next. And that's about, the first one is 10, the second one's about 22. So there are 2 in a line that are 12 millimeters between the 2 adjacent detectors.
Got it. Do you also get the third nearest?
Yeah, so we actually get out to about 35 millimeters pretty cleanly. And we're still doing some tests, so maybe we'll get 40. It's early days of having these systems together and really starting to do measurements with them.
Yeah. Very nice. Very, very nice. Wow. All right. I have some detailed questions, but I can wait to bring them up later.
Yeah, so let's dive into the details. I'm going to show you a demo first. Pause for 1 second. I'm going to move all my computer stuff into frame so you can see it. I've got a single module. It's connected to one of the microcontrollers that aggregates data, plugged into a single USB cable. So we're going to get both power and data over the USB cable.
Those microcontrollers are on the helmet, or are they in some backpack sort of thing?
On the helmet.
And a microcontroller can communicate with how many modules?
That's a good question. So we have it split up hierarchically. So we have one microcontroller connects to 14 to 16 modules, and then we have one master microcontroller that pulls data in from all the modules.
So you have like 4 microcontrollers then?
Yeah, five total, yeah. So on the left is the histogram view, and what I'm showing are the histograms from all 6 channels of a single module. And then on the right here, you can see total counts first time. So what I'm gonna try and do is a demo for you where you can see both the histograms and a good pulse signal from the total counts channel at the same time. So I have it face down on the desk right now. If I compress it, you can see that the noise goes down actually. So this is...
It's just a counter. There's no phantom. There's no scattering material.
Right here it's just the desk. I'm just pressing it down. So then if I put it on my hand, you can see histograms on the left side, and the total counts start changing on the right side. And then what I'm going to try and do is use both my hands and get a good heartbeat signal off of my forehead here.
I'm confident you're going to get heartbeat with that signal to noise ratio I see with the TPSF.
Well, there it is.
Yep, I see it.
And
that's CW. That's total counts.
That's total counts. That's CW equivalent.
Total counts. What? Sample rate. What is the update rate?
So that's why I wanted you to see the heart rate. So we're updating at 200 hertz, which is pretty impressive. So for broader context, most time domain systems today that are equivalent to this usually collect at about 1 hertz. That's 1 sample per second. We're running 200 times faster than that, which lets us pick up a lot more of the...
What were you just showing, on your forehead there, about how many photons per second?
Yeah, so this is, I took it off. This is about 4 million counts per histogram. So that's about 800 million counts per second, almost a billion counts per second.
That's pretty insane. That is pretty insane.
Yeah.
I think that, right. So typical time domain systems, you'll worry about the photon pileup, when you get to 1 million, right, per second. So you're already at 800 million per second. So that gives us some idea of the impressive engineering inside that detector.
Yeah, we worked really hard because we knew that one thing that would really unlock the power of time domain system was being able to get the signal fast. And by getting fast signals, we can do a lot with this. And so each of the 6 detectors gives that 800 million counts per second, and then we have 312 of those across the head. So we generate an enormous amount, or we capture an enormous amount of photons per second, which just allows us to really resolve what's happening inside the brain even better.
So, I have a detailed question about the IRF, if that's okay, or I could save it for later.
You could ask the detailed IRF question, and then I'll power this down, and we can start tearing apart what's inside the module, so you can see the engineering that went into it.
Yeah. So I know the measurement you're making now that you showed just now was only a 1 centimeter separation, but when the probe was looking at the desk, you're measuring the reflectance off of the desk, and that is a little bit more narrow than what's on the head. So, so what is the width of that?
So the width of the IRF, so the IRF is the fundamental limit of sort of the time resolution of the system. So full width half max is around 200 picoseconds. Nice. And we get about 5 orders of magnitude dynamic range when measuring the IRF.
Yeah, impressive, right? Okay, so right, of course, that is a log scale. Maybe, can you put it back on your forehead?
Sure. And I also want to reiterate that this is in room light conditions, so there's a lot of extra background.
So how many orders of magnitude are we looking at there?
So this is 10 to the 5th to 10 to the 2nd, just on my forehead here.
Got it. So I see a couple channels there that were really tall, and low noise, and then a couple other channels that didn't have as much dynamic range between the peak and the noise floor.
Yeah, so this is actually something I did to make the visual easier. So I lowered the red laser power so that when we look at total counts, red and infrared would be separated enough that we could just look at the infrared and see a clean heartbeat. So the red is just as strong as the infrared. I just turned down the laser power for a better vision.
Nice. Okay, I forgot. Right, of course. There's 6 detectors, but each detector, you've got 2 wavelengths.
Yes, that's true. So the purple, Yeah, the purple is infrared and the blue is red. Obviously, very intuitive.
All right, so hopefully you can see why we are so excited about what we've built. It really introduces a new era of performance and possibility. So now we're going to jump into the next segment, and we're going to talk about how you can get a Kernel Flow device. There's three things we're trying to achieve with these initial 50 devices. First is we'd like to build an ecosystem where users can communicate, collaborate, and collectively expand the reach of brain imaging. We want this to become a team sport. Second, the Kernel Flow 50 is a pioneering group who will receive early and preferred access to the first 50 systems. And third is to set the stage. The objective of these 50 systems is to showcase the biggest market and scientific potential of flow, with the intention that everyone will see that it will immediately become apparent of the value of what we've built and why people would want these devices in their homes. So with that, Ryan, do you want to start going through the...
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So our flow system is really designed for ease of use. Our aim is to provide our partners with a system that they can take out of the box and get their first result based on our reference tasks within 4 hours. The systems we're offering as part of this Flow 50 are our production prototypes. These are devices that will be representative of the form, performance, and function of our final production systems. These production systems we're finalizing now, and we'll have them ready for sale in the fall of 2021. So as part of this program, I'll go through what all we're including. First, obviously, is a flow system. You get up to 52 optical modules, which is over 1,000 channels for those that know td-fNIRS, and you get up to 8 integrated EEG active electrodes. We'll include an auxiliary device with analog and digital inputs that allows you to sync external hardware with our flow system.
I'll bring this out as a prop for you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Here's an inside.
So you can see all the 52 modules, which you saw in the demo teardown video previously. In addition to all this, we're going to give you a dedicated task and data acquisition PC. We just want to standardize things across the board to make it easy for our partners to get started. In addition, we have a kernel API that helps with the data analysis. We'll provide a development sandbox, give you example data and reference points on how to use our API, optional cloud-based data processing and analysis infrastructure. But we also want to support people who are familiar with using existing tools. So we'll allow export of data to standard SNRF format for offline processing, so you don't have to work in the cloud if you don't want to. And then we're going to give you the same great things that we use internally when we run our studies. So we're going to give you robust process checking so that you'll avoid mistakes. They're the same quality controls that we use. We're going to give you secure data storage. So we'll put privacy and security first because it matters a lot to us. In addition, we'll have a study tracker dashboard for easy and safe monitoring of participant progress through your studies. A reference task code base, including examples and ways to easily integrate them with your existing workflows. So we want to work with you. We don't want you to just have to take what we give you. And then two last things that really help us in supporting you be successful is we'll have daily system diagnostics and logging with preventative support. So our goal is to identify problems before they become critical. We want to give you 100% uptime with the system and 0 avoidable mistakes. And lastly, we'll have a community support knowledge base. And this is where we'll give you access to support resources should you have any problems with the system or questions on the best ways to use it. So this all sounds great. How are we pricing these systems? What's our system cost? We get this question a lot. So for Flow 50, we're doing something special. For every organization or team that would like a Flow device, you need to submit an application. We want to be surprised by the amazing things that you will all do with a Kernel Flow device. And to encourage creative ideas with broad appeal, we're going to give away 10 full head coverage systems, all 52 modules populated, free of charge, to the applications that demonstrate the most scientific and market potential, and maybe both. All the applicants that are not selected for the 10 free systems will have the option to purchase a system starting at $5,000 for the base configuration. We'll prioritize partners, since we only have 50 systems that we can work with, based on the quality of their applications. After this event, the application will be available on our website, and we'll accept entries between November 1st and December 31st with rolling selection throughout those 2 months.
Great, thank you. And Ryan, can people anticipate if they get a free system, would it come with your autograph?
By request.
By request, all right. Great, we'll jump into the Q&A portion. Prior to the event, we had several questions that were submitted, and we chose the most commonly asked to address them in advance. First, will this device be available internationally? Ryan?
Yes, we will work with our international partners to evaluate any requirements they have for receiving and using one of our Flow 50 devices. If you have any specific questions or concerns, please include them when you submit your application to participate in Flow 50.
What risks and potential issues are there for users? Catherine?
This is a very commonly asked question. Using light to measure physiology has become just so much more common. It's in your fitness trackers, it's in a sleep tracker. So this is a very safe way of monitoring your physiology and your brain. There are widely accepted standards for safe levels of light, and that's what we adhere to.
Could this be used for medical applications? Ryan?
Yes. However, we are not currently headed down the path for regulatory approval. We do welcome collaborations with partners that would like to explore clinical or medical applications. We are 100% supportive of those partners. As the need develops, we will work through the appropriate regulatory channels to get the necessary approvals. But currently, we have not started any of those processes.
What privacy features will be considered? What security feature will exist? I'll take this one. I wrote the answer out. Brain data is personal, and we want to empower people to control access to the data. We have built our infrastructure to put the individual at the center in control of what we call their neurome. It's everything about a user that makes them who they are. The individual controls access to their personal data. In terms of security, we are building encryption into our devices from the start. No brain data will leave the interface without first being encrypted. In our production systems, the encryption starts at the detector and is maintained all the way to the cloud. Next question, what is the spatial and temporal resolution of the device, and how deep can you image? Catherine?
3 questions, all
Okay,
in one.
yeah, you're right.
I'll answer the deep part first. So we're only able to measure the cortex, no deep subcortical structures. Our spatial resolution is online with other optical systems, so we are thinking it's around 1 centimeter. We're going to do a full analysis. If there are any experts listening, you know it's a very complex question, and we're going to do a full analysis and publish those results. And our temporal resolution, we collect data at 200 hertz. We do have some time multiplexing to get all the different areas. So accounting for that, we're going to be measuring at around 30 hertz.
Great. That's very efficient. Will you publish details of the Flow device? Ryan?
Yes, so we are currently working to characterize our Flow system using a couple of standard protocols that are common in td-fNIRS research. So they are the BIP and MEDFOT protocols. In addition, we're working on, we're performing neuroscience tasks to validate our system for doing brain imaging, and we anticipate publishing a paper sometime in early 2021 with all the results of characterization and neuroscience validation tasks for anyone who would like to see.
All right, how much data has been collected to date? do you have examples of brain measurements? Catherine.
I'm hoping we have a video for this one. Yeah? Okay. So if you can play that's fine. Oh, okay. All right. So most of our human data has been collected with a prototype system, our beta prototype system. So we've been using that since March, and since then we've collected over 700 data sets. That's over 400 hours of human brain data. Right now we're in the middle of a study where we're looking at the impact of natural variability in sleep on cognition. So we're interested in how just differences in how you sleep over time can impact your working memory or inhibition or all of these interesting things about thinking. In the image you'll see some brain activation. This is from the NBAC task. If anyone is a neuroscience buff, you'll recognize that as very common. And what it shows is the brain activation over several days. So this is what happens, or the kind of data that we can get when we're able to image people quickly, easily, every day or every other day. And we're really thinking that both our data analysts are really excited about the kind of statistical power we're able to get with this sort of data, and also just thinking about how this natural variability that happens in our everyday life is showing up in our brains.
Great. Yeah, hopefully hopefully you were impressed with those visuals. We certainly are. And as we build the interfaces, it will be really important for us to develop, all of us, to develop intuition, understanding about our brain. So we do see visualization as a very powerful tool in helping us understand our brain and minds. All right, next question. We have one more question, then we'll go to live cues. If you're imagining your device being part of everyday life, will we feel okay wearing it? Catrice, you want to take that one?
I'll come in here. Hi, everyone. So as we're looking towards the future, we're absolutely thinking about consumer-facing designs. If we want something that you'd feel comfortable wearing to a party or out in public, and we're actually interested in even collaborating with creators, artists, designers on creating, the headwear of the future.
Great. So while Ryan and Catherine are counting every photon up to 1 billion per second per detector, Catrice is making sure that you can go to a party wearing it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Catrice. Oh, and also Catrice. So we have this practice at the company where we do shout outs, and that is any person can shout out anyone else for something they've done. Usually it's something that's emulation worthy. So at this time it's appropriate to give Catrice a shout out in organizing this live stream event. When you're at Kernel, these kinds of things don't replace stuff you do, they just add on top. So Catrice has been maintaining multiple full-time jobs. So thank you, Catrice, for doing all of this and making it work today.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, guys.
All right, we have just a few minutes left. We're going to end at 1 Pacific promptly. First question, is it possible to reduce the number of channels in the headset and only record activities in the important brain areas of concern, that are of concern?
Yes, that's a great question. So as you saw in the teardown video, it's a modular system, and we're very interested in working with people who have ideas on using a subset of full head coverage. So you heard from Joy Hirsch, who talked about the power of looking at the whole brain holistically. But we also know that there's a lot of interesting stuff you can do with just regions of the brain. So we want to support the full spectrum, which is why we've designed the system to be as modular as it is. And that really gives you a knob to turn based on how much you want to spend on a system, is how many modules you would like to use to cover the head.
Next question is, how much power does the system consume in its current configuration?
That's a great question. So I also mentioned in the teardown, and I think you'll see in the long stream version, we connect over a single USB-C connector. So we deliver power over the USB-C connector, and we transmit the data currently over a USB-C connector. So what that means is we fall within the power envelope of USB PD, which is the USB standard for delivering power up to 100 watts on a device. Right now, we're well below that limit, but we have room to grow.
Another one for you, Ryan. Is Flow wired? How is the data transferred off the helmet?
Yes. So previous question addressed that. So currently we use USB-C. So we're using actually USB 2.0 as the standard for data transmission off the helmet. However, we are working on further compressing data and driving towards a wireless-based data transmission. So someday we hope to make Flow fully untethered, but in its current form, you should expect to have a single cable connecting the headset to your data acquisition PC.
Okay. A follow-on question. Can you be more specific on what you're looking for in your first 50 partners?
Do you want to take it?
Yeah. So we are, Kernel Flow is a device that achieves performance, accessibility, price that it's never been available in the market before. And with that is a bunch of new possibilities that we can map on previous things that have been done traditionally, but also we can imagine a whole new set of possibilities. And so we are looking specifically for people who understand the power of the system we've built. For example, you heard the number of photons, we're collecting the sample rate, the whole head coverage, et cetera. We think there's a new horizon to be explored here. And so there's two outcomes we really care about. One is demonstration of market potential. Doing things where you could reasonably imagine wanting one in your home yourself. And number two is the scientific potential, which of course will spawn other people doing more interesting things. So we're really looking for exceptional demonstrations of the technology. Do you have any issues with crosstalk interference between channels? Which one of you wants to take it?
Toss that one to Catherine.
Usually we just adjust the power so that we don't have this problem. But yeah, we are aware of this problem and just make it so that it doesn't happen. And also multiplex, I guess.
Yes, and we have time multiplexing built in, which Catherine mentioned in one of her previous comments about we have 200 hertz sampling rate, but we actually do a full scan of the head every 30 hertz. So that's factoring in for the time multiplexing.
Great. Okay, with that, I think we'll wrap. The last thing I think we would probably want to prioritize is communication to all of you who have an interest in moving the field forward. People who are here at Kernel, we're a team of just under 100. And the one thing we all share in common is a burning passion to make this work. And every person has their own unique reason for being here. But we are a group that is deeply passionate about what we do. We sincerely believe that what we are working on will become among the most consequential developments in the world over the coming years. And we'd like to find people of all sorts of skill sets, from neuroscience to signal processing, data analysis, across the board. So we would invite all of you, if you have an interest in exploring working at Kernel, please speak with us. We're a fun group. We get along fantastically well. We have a great time. So, all right, with that, anything else? Thank you very much for joining today. We will be hosting events in the coming months to move this along, to bring you along with us so that we are marching the progress together. And until then, take care.